What I did want to highlight to you is a really cool fun fact that you may not have known about this year's Emancipation Day, and that's that a go bus is actually being wrapped to celebrate Emancipation Day. So hopefully if you catch that go bus driving around in the streets of Toronto, you can click a photo of that or snap a photo of that and upload that to social media. So I talked about it in my intro, about the impact that is Toronto Carnival. We all know it's North America's largest outdoor festival. Each and every one of us has probably attended Carnival at some point in our lives. But just in case you didn't know, Carnival is actually a direct result of emancipation. That's what it is. There's so much history behind it that we wanted to go deeper into that for you. But also highlight the fact that Carnival means so much to Toronto. It means so much to Canada. I mean, it is a highlight of Caribbean culture. Is it not safe to say that Toronto and Canada would not be the city and country it is without Caribbean culture? And that's not being boasty, that's just stating facts. Anyways, I know I can talk too much, I chat too much, so let's just get on with the show. And here's a timeline of Toronto Carnival.
In 1967, the roots of Emancipation Day celebrations influenced the creation of Caribana in Toronto. Introduced as part of the programming for Canada's centennial celebration, Caribbean immigrants brought the forms of observing Emancipation Day and freedom through Carnival to the shaping and establishment of this popular African-Canadian tradition. Parading through the streets was and is a core element of Emancipation Day. Black people dressed in costumes and regalia, creating a spectacle of color heavily influenced by African motifs and Black cultural symbols. They played music, sang songs, danced, and performed in public. There were floats, dignitaries, community leaders, performers that were part of the procession. Along with the underlying themes of freedom, there were other themes and messages of culture, community, protest, resistance, and pride creatively woven into the occasion. Caribana, an extension of the Caribbean Carnival, was born in slavery and out of emancipation.
Proud to say I was an original participant of the first Caribana with the Cougars, the band that I sang with. And I must say to many that Caribana at that time was a special gift to Canada for her 100th birthday. It was a gift from the West Indian community to celebrate Canada's 100th birthday. And this gift was all the Caribbean islands came together and form a committee and decided to celebrate in a very special way with this carnival or Caribana, which originated the first parade, I should say, took place on Yonge Street from Bloor to Yonge, south onto City Hall. And from there, all road leads to Center Island, where we would celebrate until late at night with a grandstand show with various artists. And I can remember on that day, the final day of Caribana, the Governor General of Jamaica at that time, Sir Clifford Campbell, came and gave such a wonderful speech at Center Island. And I must say, I am very proud that the Cougars, the band that I sang with, was able to play both national anthems, the Canadian anthem and the Jamaican anthem. And it went on for many years, and that Caribana parade went on for so many years until the parade changed its route to University Avenue, then the Lakeshore. To all the people who made it possible for us to celebrate Carnival, as we call it now, or celebrate Caribana then. I am very, 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 very thrilled because what it did, it allowed us to share our culture with the rest of the world. And today, Carnival in Canada or in Toronto is very well accepted. And it's a very, very special treasure, a special gift for our grandchildren. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. These ladies had, including my mom, they had nowhere to go on their day off until they finally had a place which was called the WIF Club, WIF Club, which is known as the West Indian Federation Club. And it was owned and run by the Geary family and the Lynn family. Mr. Harry Geary and Kermit and Kingsley Lynn, they were the proprietors of the WIF Club, which is known as the West Indian Federation. And that club, which was located at College and Brunswick Avenue, my goodness, there's so much it did for the community. There's so much that WIF Club did help so many people to get their landed papers of Canada, and the stories of the West Indian Federation Club is never ended. So I'd like to take time to acknowledge the West Indian Federation Club and the part it plays.
Under the Diefenbaker government, the Canadian immigration law was liberalized to include a point system. And the point system meant that if you spoke French or English and you had certain professional qualifications or academic qualifications, and you could enter Canada and eventually become a landed immigrant and a citizen. Previously, it was really based on a criterion of race. If you're white coming from Europe or the United States, you're free to enter Canada. Before that, it was very difficult for Black people and other people of color to enter Canada. So you had this liberalization in 1962 based on a point system, and then further liberalization in 1967 under Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson. And that meant that tens of thousands of people from the West Indies or the Caribbean entered Canada. From the British West Indies, they came from places like Guyana or former British Guyana, Trinidad, Jamaica, and from the French West Indies, people came predominantly from Haiti. Lots of professionals came, people who were medical doctors, nurses, teachers, accountants, you name it, from all types of professional pathways. These people entered Canada. And what happened was really a brain drain for the sending countries, because it's the best and the brightest that were coming. It's interesting because that requirement was not put in place for people coming from Europe or white people from the United States. But it's almost as if people coming from the global South had to be super qualified. Students also came. Students also came to the various colleges and universities. We think of the students who went to Sir George William University in Montreal. Of course, there was a famous Sir George William University computer riot. And so dozens of these students came from the West Indies to pursue professional degrees. And unfortunately, many of them were denied that opportunity to gain their degrees because so many were deported and were put in jail because they were charged with burning down the computer lab, which, as people said, the West Indian students didn't do it. But what also happened in this era from 1962 onward, throughout the decade of the 60s and into the 70s, is this real flowering of culture, real flowering of the arts. There was a development of the literary arts and also of the visual arts. We think of writers like Austin Clarke, who we call the Dean of African Canadian Writing. Austin came to Canada during the 50s, but certainly his literary contributions took flight in the decade that we're speaking of, in the decade of the 1960s. West Indian people really changed the landscape of towns in southern Ontario, especially Toronto. But people also went west. People went to Manitoba, to Saskatchewan, to Alberta, to British Columbia. So many Caribbean teachers taught on native reserves in British Columbia, in Manitoba, and in Alberta. So the teachers made a tremendous contributions out west. We know of the domestic scheme, the women who came and worked in the domestic scheme as maids and domestics in the homes of white Canadians. And they did this throughout the country, from Nova Scotia right back to British Columbia. West Indian people changed the country with their culinary culture by introducing new foods and new dishes and new recipes and new ways of blending Caribbean cuisine with quote unquote Canadian cuisine. And of course, and the setting up of various restaurants, various Caribbean restaurants, cook shops and takeout shops. And the musical culture was just incredible, because people introduced the reggae music and calypso and soca to Canada. And we see the manifestations of this culture, this musical culture, in places like Little Jamaica up on Eglinton Avenue West. So the Caribbean migration, people who came in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and their children and grandchildren and their great-grandchildren have contributed greatly to the country of Canada.
Hi, my name is Dijon Hamilton, and I am a steel pan player. The steel pan and its relationship to emancipation is one that shares many parallels. The very history of the steel pan is in the face of oppression. It's in the face of the banning of the djembe drum that led to the introduction of a new instrument called the tambour bamboo that eventually led to the invention of the steel pan. And based off of, the banning, and based off of oppression, and based off of the struggle, we had innovation, we had new life, we had something that came from a struggle that became beautiful. So the two stories are interwoven when it comes to the emancipation story of how we came to be, the constant fight, the constant ability to be able to readjust and to be able to change the narrative to say, this is what we're struggling with, and this is what we're going through, and this is what we're going to turn it through consistent sacrifices and consistent fighting to be able to make something ugly into something beautiful. So I'd love to leave the thought with you about the parallels of how the steel pan shares that similarity, how the steel pan and just music in general shares that relationship to emancipation, allowing something that was ugly to turn into something that has been beautiful through struggle, through oppression, has come innovation, has produced a beautiful thing through the long run.
Hello, my name is Dan Hill, and I'm very proud to say that my parents, Daniel Grafton Hill III and my mother, Donna Hill, were huge advocates of human rights. My dad started the Ontario Human Rights Commission in 1965, the first commission of its kind to prosecute landlords and shop owners who would not rent apartments or allow Black people to shop. So a hugely seminal role as a human rights advocate fighting systemic racism. My mother, the same. They were amazing partners. In 1978, they actually started the Ontario Black Historical Society. which was very important because we all need to know so much more about the wonderful Black history that we come from. Because frankly, we don't see a lot of stories about how rich and powerful and inspiring our Black history was. So I'm so thrilled that my parents had the vision to start the Ontario Black History Society. Now it's a huge part of the Canadian fabric. I've tried in my own way to carry on in my parents' wonderful example of fighting systemic racism. I've written a lot of articles on these subjects. I've written books on these subjects. I've released a lot of records, some of them huge hit songs based on these subjects. A few months ago, I released a single I wrote called What About Black Lives? It's a lyric video single, which goes right to the heart of some of the things that have been going on that have been vexing Black people. Again, that song was spurred on by the murder of George Floyd, but given that I grew up in the family I grew up in, we knew all about this stuff going on back when I was 5. All I can say is when I think of the Ontario Black History Society, I think of my parents, and I'm very moved.
When we speak about the evolution of Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago, most people use the arrival of the French in the late 18th century as a starting point. And the French, they had these lavish balls, private events in which they would dress up in very elaborate costumes, and the lavishness of these balls no doubt left an impression on the onlooking slaves who were not allowed to participate in these balls. So they decided instead to mimic and imitate the French using whatever they had on hand at the time: simple rags, simple tins, beads, and buttons to imitate the jewelry. So many of Trinidad and Tobago's traditional carnival characters have their origins in imitation, but also in the resourcefulness and creativity of our African ancestors. But it wasn't until 1834, when emancipation took root in Trinidad and Tobago, that Carnival developed into an outlet and a festival for emancipated slaves, and really exploded into the start of what we now know Carnival to be. Today, Carnival remains very much associated with those feelings of freedom, liberation, and exuberance. When we aren't celebrating Carnival, we're reminiscing about it. We even coined a term for that feeling: Carnival Tabanca. That nostalgia, that sense of longing until Carnival time comes around again. And clearly that Tabanca followed the Caribbean immigrant community to Canada. But the opportunity to remedy that sense of longing didn't really arise until 1967, when the Caribbean community in Toronto was asked to organize a special event to highlight Caribbean culture, a sort of gift to celebrate Canada's 100th birthday. For me, it's not very surprising that the community would decide that its gift should take the form of a carnival. It's also not very surprising to me that the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago, being very proud of its carnival traditions and its carnival product, would decide to donate our winning Queen and King costumes that year to that early effort of the diaspora community. So now we fast forward 54 years later, and Toronto Caribbean Carnival is North America's biggest cultural festival with a significant tourism and economic impact. Beyond that, it's also a bridge and a connection to home and to history for those trying to express Caribbean culture in an adopted location. It's also definitely not an exclusive ball, but really quite the opposite. It's a celebration of diversity, bringing together people from all walks of life who might, under normal circumstances, never mingle. And that is the essence of Caribbean Carnival, and we are very proud of it. I'm sure many would agree that we just can't wait to be on the road again.
This is emotion passed in the House of Commons, page 17670 of the Hansard, December 14th, 1995. Jean Augustine, Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Liberal. Mr. Speaker, with the unanimous consent of the House, I move, seconded by the Honorable Member for Quebec, the Honorable Member for Kootenay East, and the Honorable Member for Burnaby Kingsway. And this is the motion: that this House take note of the important contribution of Black Canadians to the settlement, the growth, and the development of Canada. The diversity of the Black community in Canada and its importance to the history of this country. And I ask that we recognize February as Black History Month. The Speaker then asked the question to the House: does the Honorable Parliamentary Secretary have the unanimous consent of the House to move this motion? Is it agreed? And all honorable members agreed. And so the motion was passed December 14th, 1995. And I've just read from Hansard that have documented this momentous motion at this important part of our history.
All right, for everybody that's out there, I go by the name of Mr. Cardinal Official. And, you know, I just wanted to talk to you about the time around Bacardi slang and what led up to it. You know, my first song that I ever released was a song called Naughty Dread, where I sampled Bob Marley's Naughty Dread and just flipped the connotation of it. But since the very first song that I ever put out as a professional artist, I always felt that it was necessary to express myself while infusing my roots and my culture in with obviously the popular genre that I love, which is hip hop. And I think once I got my first record deal, it was definitely my intention to make sure and show the rest of the world what our culture, what our vibrations, what our energy was like here in Toronto. And that's how the song Bacardi Slang was born. Bacardi Slang was a song that talked about what it is that we do here, but not just what we do, how we do it, why we do it, what we say while we're doing it. And, you know, really the punch, you know, kind of the apex for the hook was when I said, and everybody knows it's the T dot. And I think that is super important because all these different things, all these different islands, all these different people that immigrated to Toronto makes up who we are. And it's always, you know, been a strong component of the hip hop industry here. If you look at all of the big boys, if you look at Dream Warriors, if you look at Maestro Fresh West, Mishi Me, Rumble and Strong, you know, all of the people that really started off this hip hop thing in Toronto, all either from the Caribbean or have Caribbean roots. And I think it's very important for us to not just acknowledge the contributions that was given to people of you know, Caribbean heritage and people that are descendants of Caribbean people. But, you know, to this day, we are still people that are in every facet of the industry, and not just the creatives, but even myself. Now I've diversified and become the senior vice president of A&R for Universal Music. So we have a seat at the table now, and we're getting more seats at the table. But the most important thing is that we have never code switched, that we remain who we are. And, you know, that's why it is so important to me. And such an amazing thing that after all these years, we can retain the beauty of our culture, inject it into that. And now people around the world can see us. You know what I'm saying? People around the world can see it in our hip hop. They can see it in our pop music. They can see it come through Afro beats. They can see it come through so many different genres. But, you know, it all originated from the islands. And, you know, shout out to every island, my family's beautiful island of Jamaica.
My name is Sud Sutherland. I'm a director and writer.
And my name is Jen Holness. I'm a writer, producer, director.
And we made the film Home Again back in 2012. This was a labor of love. We wanted to tell the story of Jamaican deportees once they hit the ground in Jamaica, and because we were told that it was sometimes could be a death sentence. And this film was based on a lot of research. We were interviewed over 40 deportees in Jamaica, and we wanted to tell their story, but in a fictional way.
Yeah, and I think we were inspired because we had realized that a lot of international governments were changing their laws and policy to make it easier to deport folks, and we wanted to look at the consequences of that in a really realistic way.
We hope you enjoy the film.
So 9 years ago, this summer, the Royal Ontario Museum launched Carnival from Emancipation to Celebration. Personally, I was thrilled. This was a dream come true for me to be able to bring this idea to the Royal Ontario Museum and to galvanize so many stakeholders and partners to begin a conversation at the ROM that started on July 28, 2012 and ended during Black History Month on February 24th, 2013. And really this exhibition was an opportunity to work with Brian McFarlane to commemorate the celebration at the time of the Jamaican and Trinidad and Tobago independence and also Emancipation Day. The exhibition was displayed in both the Hilary and Galen Weston wing on level 2 of the Royal Ontario Museum and in the Hyacinth Gloria Chen Crystal, and symbolically the exhibition closed during Black History Month. So I'm going to turn it to Sylvia to talk a little bit about the exhibition itself and the way that it was positioned within the ROM.
Yeah, so this was a small but mighty project that really enabled us to connect in a variety of ways with communities and the public to celebrate Carnival and the beauty and artistry that goes into creating mass and celebrating this very important event throughout the Caribbean and in Toronto itself. So the exhibition had 21 hand-painted rendering of Brian McFarlane's Mass that really touched upon a variety of themes and ideas that were, yes, about Carnival, but often about our society and what is happening in the world as well. So each of the rendering was somehow analyzed and discussed, and we had 4 costumes as well that were partly in the gallery and partly at the entrance of the museum as a way to really invite the public to make their way to the 2nd floor and explore more about Brian McFarlane's work, but also the history of Carnival. Both in Trinidad, we had some amazing footage of the Trinidad Carnival, and in Toronto, where it is such an important, meaningful, heartfelt event for the Caribbean community, but for the city at large. And this was really an important aspect of the exhibition that we wanted to emphasize throughout, and also move away from just the first week, the week of Carnival, where everybody celebrates Carnival, but really have a half a year of thinking through these ideas, these concepts, and the importance of this celebration for our city.
It was incredibly important to me to dive into the historical aspects of the Carnival experience as it relates to emancipation. Historically, Carnivals are associated with that pre-Lenten period in the Christian calendar. Many Caribbean-based carnivals, including Toronto's, takes place around Emancipation Day, the 1st of August. In Ontario, this holiday weekend commemorates Simcoe Day, named for John Graves Simcoe, the first Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada. In 1793, Lord Simcoe passed the Act Against Slavery that led to the abolition of slavery in Upper Canada well before the British Act in 1834. In the Caribbean and in the diaspora, Carnival is an important celebration of freedom against oppression. In the 18th century, people of African descent were banned from participating in the pre-Lenten Christian festivities and masquerades that we call fêtes or mass. For this time, they were able to really, look to their French and British masters in a way that was mocking them. And they could do that without fear of repercussions. And so enslaved Africans developed their own carnival characters and performances. So when the abolition of slavery in the British Empire was fully implemented in 1838, people of African and South Asian descent transformed carnival celebrations by introducing new and subversive elements into the performance and music of festival. In Ontario, carnival was first introduced to Toronto in 1967, a gift from the local Canadian Caribbean community to Canada to commemorate the centennial of our new northern home. So the concept of emancipation resonates with me on a number of levels, especially now. I think back to 2019 with the commemoration of the 185th anniversary of emancipation, when Mayor John Tory proclaimed Emancipation Month in the city of Toronto. I think to this current month with the passing of Juneteenth in the USA. And I now also celebrate this idea that in March of 2021, the federal government recognized Emancipation Day with a unanimous vote and designated August 1st as the day in 1834 when the act to abolish slavery in Canada became a reality. So for me, this is a time of deep celebration. This is a time for us to be reverent and to consider our ancestors who paved the way for us to have and enjoy the lives we have today.
Hi, good afternoon. Petronella Marchand here from Paliseco Innovations Group Limited. I'm happy to share how I came up with the idea of the junior chef. It was actually a twofold idea. It was about embracing Caribbean food and Grace as a company that has participated with the festival for over 25 years, and also being able to take the junior carnival to another level because there's so many components to the festival that matter. So the Junior Chef was actually created as part of the Toronto Caribbean Carnival Family Day. And it was just another element. Food is an important part of a culture. Culinary is an important part of the carnival. And, it was just another element to give the children a chance to showcase what they can do for Grace Grace as a supporter. And, it was another element for Grace to highlight what they bring to the festival, and for the carnival in itself to showcase our culinary aspects and our kids. It has been a wonderful journey. We've done it for 4 years. In 2020 we won the Festival and Events Ontario Award, and I'm grateful and thankful that it has done so well. In the 4 years, the majority of the winners have been boys, which is very, very interesting. And we have had one chef in particular. His name is Adrian, Chef Adrian, and he's actually taken his craft to another level. He has a YouTube channel. He's actually, he's on Instagram. He cooks and he does a lot of different things. And I've actually had parents who have had kids participate that told me, it sort of raised their level of awareness, and it gave them a little confidence participating. So yeah, we've had some luck with some of the kids that have actually they're still cooking. They're still cooking and doing other things. So yeah, like I said, I feel blessed and grateful to know that some of the kids are actually still continuing in what they're doing.
I came to Toronto in 1970. I had no intentions of getting involved in the carnival, bearing in mind my dad did it for 35 years in Trinidad. And he did a lot for Trinidad Carnival. He started in 1953, and he was the first band leader to break the band down into sections. And it's so prevalent with all the Caribbean carnivals today. And he was also the first person that introduced metal intermask and short skirt. So from Trinidad, they wrote a story about him when he died, and they called him the historian of Trinidad Carnival. So you can say I was born into the culture. And I came up in 1970, and I was going to school, working full time. And I got in, my father came up in 1976, and he encouraged me to get involved in the carnival. Actually, he wanted to do something very, very simple. And I told him, no, we got to be competitive, because if some of the guys should beat him, they would say they beat the great Harold Saldana. So I got involved in the presentation of the band, the designs, and so on. And that's where we started in 1977. And we won Band of the Year the first time out. And we only had about 85 people that play mass with us. And, you know, when you look back in the history of what we did in 2019, and then COVID came in, the last band that we brought, we had 5,200 mass players that participate with us. I want to tell you that it's a team effort. You know, I work with a lot of people from the Caribbean who support me 100%. And without them, there wouldn't be no Louis Saldana. They do the work and they make me look good. But it's always a team effort. And the reason I get involved too, and I continue to get involved, is making my Caribbean people happy and let them be proud of what we are doing, you know. This festival brings in 200. Well, when I came in about 15 years ago, the Decima report stated that the festival brings in $250 million into the economy. And in 2019, it says that we brought in $450 million. And, you know, our people, our Caribbean people, we have to find a way to share in that $450 million, because, you know, when the three levels of government support the festival in a very minimum way, you know, and give different groups millions, we are bringing something to the table, you know, and they have to respect that. So I believe the three levels of government should do more where our festival is concerned. And I also want to say the Saldana family is involved in Carnival for 75 years, the longest. And once I step away, I'm positively sure my three sons and daughter would be involved in the Carnival, because they have been involved in the band for the past 10 years, working alongside me.
In 2020, the global pandemic canceled the Toronto Carnival and other events in the city for the first time. And it was a big loss, because everybody had already been inside for so long. And we really wanted to give them something to continue to celebrate Caribbean culture and freedom and diversity, regardless of not having a parade. And we were able to pivot to a virtual carnival and bring carnival into the homes across Ontario, across Canada, and across the world. And to have everybody celebrate as one, and to put on their costumes and jump, dance, and wave, and celebrate their Caribbean heritage in their homes. And this year for 2021, when we found out again that we would not again be meeting in person, and we know that everybody really needed something, a positive uplift, we decided to pivot to supporting Caribbean businesses and local Caribbean businesses. We came up with a food festival program that would support all the vendors, that, as well as the mass, pan, and calypso, and bring them together in one place. We know that the first thing people were going to get out to patio season, and we wanted to bring the excitement and the feel, the sights, sounds, flavors of Carnival into those patios and into those restaurants, and give people a different way of celebrating Carnival and celebrating Caribbean culture, and continuing to honor the freedom and diversity. And this year, especially with Canada officially making August 1st Emancipation Day, we wanted to make sure that the celebration went forward and was bigger and better than ever, and collaborating with partners like the Ontario Black Historical Society and different book lists and organizations like that, to make sure that people were educated and understand the reason why we celebrate, because the context is sometimes lost over the years. And one of the great things that came out of the downtime that we've had to plan not only plan a better festival going forward, but we were able to reflect on the history of the festival, where we've come, where we've going, and how much it's grown over the years, and what it's really meant to the city. And we began to archive all those little pieces of history and culture. And what we found is this wonderful story that we turned into a virtual timeline historical project. And we saw the parallels between Carnival and the growth of Carnival in the Caribbean community, and pivotal moments in Caribbean culture, and also the people that made an impact in Canada, that there was so much pride in our heritage and our accomplishments. And we began to weave together this timeline and this story, and we wanted to share that with the world. We wanted it to be interactive. We wanted the community to have an opportunity to contribute to that. And we also wanted to create something that could last a long time. And we're grateful that the Ontario Black Historical Society has brought it to life even more so. And I think that speaks to the spirit of collaboration and joy that it was intended. And we just look forward to using that to build forward, and look forward to 2022, when we're all back on the road for a bigger and better festival. And I'm sure everybody will be celebrating harder than ever before. And we're excited. We really take a lot of pride and joy in planning this festival.